So you heard from Anand on real use cases being used and how the tools are being used. I talked about the strategy, and now I also want to bring out a customer who is using Gen AI to transform their business. That's Samsung SDS. So we have the pleasure of having the president and CEO of Samsung SDS, Sean Im, and the managing director for IBM who works with Samsung, Ruth Sun, to really talk about generative AI, how they're using it, what they see in the future, all those things. So let's welcome Sean and Ruth. Before I get started with Sean and Ruth, I got in a little trouble. I said about the recipe as part of, consumer AI versus generative AI, and I said I've tried a few bad recipes, and my wife pings me on the phone, says, "I heard you were talking about my cooking." I said, "No, I'm talking about ChatGPT's cooking." So anyway, Sean and Ruth, welcome to, happy to have you here. So Ruth, let me start with you. So everyone knows about Samsung, right? What is Samsung SDS? What does Samsung SDS do? I mean, it would be great for the audience to hear, what Samsung SDS is about.
Excellent question. So Samsung SDS is the digital arm of Samsung Group. It is a publicly traded $14 billion IT services organization operating globally in over 40 countries worldwide. Their core business really focuses on three areas, which is delivering IT, AI, cloud, and business transformational services to thousands of enterprises globally. And at IBM, we are delighted to work with Samsung SDS because we are currently collaborating on a broad range of generative AI initiatives that will optimize employee productivity as well as accelerate IT revenue growth.
So, Sean, let me ask you this. So I had the pleasure of grabbing dinner with Sean last night, and one thing you said that stood out to me was this phone knows more about me than I know about myself. You hear that? I mean, like the phone knows. It is becoming a data-oriented hardware device. I mean, that's what you meant when you said you are transforming the company to be more a data-centric device rather than just a hardware phone, right? Like, how are you doing that? Like, you're using data as a tool.
So, Dinesh, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. And by the way, when Jason opened up this morning, say, hey, this is for us coders, no suits, no CEOs, I think I broke both rules. But here I am. In response to your question, Dinesh, Samsung, as you know, the past 30 years or so, we've been focusing on trying to become the world's best product company. And I think we've sort of gotten close to that level. And as an example, this mobile device that you mentioned, right? This mobile phone knows all about your relationships, knows who's the most important relationships, where you spend your time, what you eat, right, when you wake up. And not only that, it knows about what applications you use. What does productivity mean for you? And you kind of said about yourself, but let me challenge you. I bet that this phone knows about you more than your wife does. But don't go back.
Don't get me in trouble anymore.
That's right. Another ping comes.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that. But so what we've gotten to realize is that building great products doesn't just mean building great hardware. It's really about the data that it captures and how you utilize that data to wrap around the user and deliver that experience. So for us, it's an aha moment. And so Samsung SDS being the digital arm of Samsung, we've been focusing on bringing more of that software and data layer more onto the forefront. A good example of that is this new initiative that's called Zero-Touch Mobility. And this kind of is a bit more of the enterprise spin, if you will, of that data-driven transformation. Every major company, including IBM, has hundreds of thousands of employees who use their phone. Now, how much of that knowledge and data are we harnessing to improve the productivity of these employees? Think about that. What if your phone were able to detect that your battery performance is degrading and proactively sends you a battery replacement? What if your applications that you use the most are struggling because of performance issues, and it proactively sends you requests to add more memory? It knows you intimately. We're just not actionalizing on those data. So zero-touch mobility is about the whole cradle-to-grave aspects of ensuring that your employees at your enterprise, at scale, can become far more effective, from procuring device to employee onboarding, troubleshooting, break fix, all the way up to retirement. So that's one example of the data type of transformation that we're seeing. We want to become not a hardware company, but an experience company. We want not a device, but basically a software. So that's really the big shift that we're trying to evolve towards.
And then we talked about Gen AI, right? Obviously, a lot of focus at the Samsung side. I mean, Ruth, you're working with Sean. What is your vision at Samsung from a Gen AI perspective? Like, what do you see? Where do you want to take it?
Right. So we're actually, Gen AI is obviously is a big thing for us, and we're approaching from multiple angles. And of course, like many other companies, we're applying Gen AI from the perspective of improving employee productivity, automating meeting minutes, drafting emails, but also from what we call optimizing processes. A good example of that is what your CTO just talked about in terms of automating coding, right. Improving the way you are able to handle case management at contact centers and whatnot. But for us, the most exciting endeavor is actually going back to that zero-touch mobility. This is about co-creation. This is about IBM and Samsung doing something that's kind of redefine how data is used to really redefine employee experience. And so what we're doing right now is we're working with IBM to embed Watson X personal assistant into our zero-touch mobility. Why? Because if you look at today, even though we've created this great software platform that harnesses data, still the users have to come to technology. They have to come to their laptops, they have to come to the mobile device, enter their problems, trying to create that sort of internal process. We want, for the first time, for the technology to come to the user and adapt around the user behavior. Be able to converse with the user. Right. If I suddenly lost a phone, just be able to call Watson and say, hey, I lost my phone, could you lock the phone? Or I need a new battery replacement, can you just send it tomorrow? Right. And there are two benefits to that. One is a humanization of the experience. But second is that, again, going back to IBM example, you've got 200,000 employees worldwide. Each of them has a mobile phone. Each of them has a massive amount of data. That's everything from fixing the phone to enabling your applications to run better. All that knowledge is there. Our challenge has been how to harness that massive amount of data and put it at the fingertip for the user. I think Gen AI can do that. And that would be a humongous transformation. We're very excited about that project.
And Dinesh, what Sean said so well around, leveraging Gen AI at the edge with this zero-touch mobility solution that Samsung has innovated around really encapsulates some of the core fundamentals that you talked about earlier in your keynote. Open, enterprise-ready, and then focused on the ecosystem to ignite innovation. So this conversation that Sean just mentioned to you really only started in May. With this thought of how do we bring Gen AI to the edge in a way that humanizes and captures data at scale for consumers, for employees, for enterprises ultimately. And we were able to rapidly both prototype type a solution, test it, and then we're in the process of deploying to one of our first customers here in third quarter. So just an excellent example of how one and one together is not 3, but it's actually 5.
Perfect. I think I have 4 more, but I only have time for one more question. But I want to ask you, Sean, first, and then Ruth, just to kind of add how IBM and you are driving, along with our partners and developers, solving that. But so you talked about Gen AI. Perfect, makes sense. You want to bring it to the end user to really take advantage of the data that's being used on the phone. What challenges do you see in adopting? And I talked about consumer AI versus enterprise AI to some extent, which I mean it. I mean, there is a lot of challenges for enterprises to adopt. But from a Samsung perspective, right? I mean, what challenges do you see in embracing the generative AI?
I think that's the most critical question for business today, because I think everyone is getting jazzed up about the promise of Gen AI. Our experience shows, and again, thanks to IBM, you guys are kind of holding our hands and walking through this experience together, but our experience shows that introducing Gen AI to your company is like opening a Pandora's box. You have no idea what's in there. What I've found is an alphabet soup of challenges. And I say alphabet soup because as we started detecting one and more of these, it kind of goes from A to Z. I'm not going to spend the whole A to Z today.
But you had a few, A for?
Yeah, so let me talk about it. A, access. When we train this corporate data through Gen AI, there are levels of confidential information. There's certain information that you want all of the employees to have, and there's certain information that you want only select employees to have. How do you control that level of accessibility is an absolutely critical question. B, bias. Gen AI is as good as the data that you train with.
Yep.
Most of that data were generated by human beings. And humans, by nature, have bias. So how do you prevent bias for this training at the outset is a major, major challenge. C, cost. As we want our own indigenous Gen AI, again, and we're trying to train billions of parameters. I kid you not, guys, this is an expensive project. It's one of the most expensive projects that we're doing. And so how do we deliver on that promise without ballooning our budget is another major issue. E, ethics. It has to be ethical. And to me, Gen AI is pattern recognition at massive scale. It does not have the ability to be cognitive, to make inference, or to make judgments. So how do we ensure that it does not, without intending bad consequence, deliver on something like that? Really quickly, PNS, privacy, security. I don't need to even explain to you guys on what that means. Lastly, transparency. When I get an answer from Gen AI, I want to know and be able to trace back to how it deduced that answer so that I can validate and believe and build trust. That transparency today does not exist. Watson delivers that.
I think you got to A, B, C, D, E.
Yes.
There's a few more, but I think we're going to jointly solve it. How do we get the alphabet soup?
Dinesh, I'd love to make that our project. And if we do it, let's publish a paper.
Yeah. I know you had an interview in Washington Post. The next interview we do, we are going to have A to Z solved.
Maybe the I there could be IBM. But that's a tall order. But we
Better
can work
said
on
than
it.
I.
I was about to say we should close at that one, but Ruth, I think you should say how IBM is helping Samsung as a partner and how our partners and also developers can help in this journey. I think Sean put it very graciously and nicely. It is a set of challenges. While the promises exist, you need a partner to come and help on solving the alphabet soup. That's going to be my new term, but it's so true.
Yeah. So, I mean, you and Sean said it well, so I don't need to kind of rehash that. The only thing I would focus on is Samsung, as a very, very deep and demanding engineering organization, has really battle tested us as it relates to our technical excellence, our technical depth, but more importantly, the fortitude in our ability and desire to partner with them across this very, very long and exciting enterprise journey. And so we're delighted to have that opportunity. We're excited to see the art of that possible come to life here this year, as well as in the coming months as we continue to navigate the generative AI field. And our hope is that all of you will be able to continue on this journey with us as well.
Well, with that, I want to say a great thank you to Sean, who's the president and CEO of Samsung SDS, and also Ruth Sun, the managing director. Thank you, folks. Really appreciate it.